The objective of this lab is to learn two new selection tools for editing layers using your photojournalistic images. I'm going to go over in class what a review of photojournalism. As you're searching through your images, you can kind of reflect on what we talk about in class in terms of photojournalism and how to select the correct image for this. These are going to be images that you've already taken this semester. All right, so you're going to choose an image that you haven't really uploaded yet. Maybe you have some cut and sitting around on your desktop that you haven't really organized. If you're going to do that, you need to use Bridge. If you're going to choose an image that you've already kind of filtered through and saved in Google Drive, just go into your Google Drive and look for that image. Make sure that it's a raw file format. Convert it using your DNG if you need to. Make sure that it fits into the photojournalism genre. I would choose an image that really isn't exposed correctly because we're going to be adjusting different selections in that image. So it might be kind of fun for you to sort of play around with an image that isn't exposed correctly and see if you can fix it. I also want you to use the compositional device of the rule of thirds, and we're going to go over that in class today so that you can have a better understanding of it. I did notice in the final that a lot of people sort of misunderstood that particular compositional device, so I'm going to review it in class so that we can really use it to the full advantage that it has. All right, so you're going to choose your image, and I chose this image here. This is an image I took over the break in Utah. I went to Arches National Park, and I also did a lot of hiking around the BLM land. And this was a train track, and over off to the side here we found some petroglyphs. So there it was snowing and really cold, and I love the ice that was sort of forming on the wood of the train tracks. And this is a sort of a shallow depth of field shot, shows a lot of open space, but also is very detailed in the foreground. All right, so you're going to open this image, and you're going to use your regular Photoshop workflow. So the very first thing you want to do is assign your color profile. So remember, you go down into Edit, Assign Profile, make sure that it's on Adobe RGB 1998, hit OK. Then you're going to always make a duplicate copy of your background. So to do that, you hold down the Control, Duplicate Layer, doesn't matter what it's called, I just click OK, and it's always background copy. It's easy for me to remember. So you're going to make that, and then you're going to go up to your unsharp mask, sharpen, unsharp mask. And it's always a good idea. Some people ask me, well, why do I have to do this twice? Well, you do it first to just kind of, you want to keep the radius low here. You do it first to just really find a way to sharpen up your image before you adjust it. So you kind of want to get maximum sharpness. Something I haven't talked about yet too is that when you're working with grittier images of nature and things that don't necessarily need to be pretty, you can go kind of far up with the amount of sharpness. But when you're working on a portrait, you don't want to go too sharp. You want to keep it kind of soft, unless you're really trying to sort of emphasize somebody's beard or their stubble or something like that. Also, if you notice, your image flattens out a little bit when you sharpen it too much. It makes it more contrasty. So we don't necessarily want that. We don't want to lose the volume in our image. So I usually don't adjust that too much. Okay, so once we do that, we're going to learn how to paint in a layer mask. So the very first thing that we're going to do is on this background copy here, we're going to make a new layer mask. So I'm going to go down to this little icon here, and I'm going to make a mask. This mask here is this little white box with a bracket around it. If you accidentally click over here and you try to paint in this area on your mask, it's not going to work. So make sure that your white box is bracketed. So to do this, we are going to be using the painting tool, which is right here in your toolbox. It looks really similar to your quick selection tool, so make sure that you're not using that because we're learning a new selection strategy here. So we're going to paint our mask in. So select that, and then make sure, go up to this section here, that you have a very soft brush. This is called soft round. The hardness is at 0 and the opacity is at 100%. You can adjust the size here, but don't worry about that too much yet because you really need to see what you're painting to know what size brush that you're going to use. Another shortcut for adjusting your brush is to use the bracket. keys. So the left bracket key will make it smaller, your brush smaller, and the right bracket key will make your brush larger. So for this particular, I'm going to paint out the sky, so I don't need my brush to be too big. All right, so we need to make sure that we are painting with black. Now the reason for this, and this is something I want you to memorize, is that black conceals and white reveals. So if we're painting a black mask onto the sky, then we are hiding the sky, we are concealing the sky and revealing the foreground here. So to make sure we have a good black, we want to click on this, and then we usually find the blackest black in the corners here. So pick that, hit OK. It has to be the top left box here. And then you're going to, in order to actually see your mask layer, we're going to hit the little backslash here. And then as we start painting, we see it turns out red. Now we're not actually painting red on there. It's just a way for us to see our mask layer. So I want you to notice as I'm doing this, look at this over here. So as I'm painting this in, you can see the black showing up here. So the neat thing about painting your layer mask in is that you can get right up to the edge here, but because you're using a soft brush, you don't have to be super particular about that edge. I mean, don't go crazy and go way over because it is going to make your image look a little bit photoshopped, but you can get pretty close to it and not worry about it because we're also going to feather that. Now, after I do a little bit of outlining here, I can actually make my brush a little bit bigger, and so I can just kind of fill in the rest. This red is really handy because we can see if we're done, if we filled it all in. Remember that it has to be opaque. Okay, so you can see that it's all filled in here. Now, we could go in and make adjustment layers if we wanted to right now, if we wanted this to be a temporary selection. But I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I have it selected, and I'm going to turn it into an actual selection. So in order to do that, we want to hold down the Control key, and we're going to click right on that. And then we're going to go down to Add Mask to Selection. And then that selects the part that we have revealed. It selects the white part. Now the neat thing about this, and what I'm going to do is get rid of that red, so I'm going to hit that backsplash again, the backslash again. I don't really need that. And then I'm going to go up to my quick selection tool, and I'm noticing here, and I can zoom in as well, that I can tweak this a little bit if I want to. Only, you don't have to, but if you're sort of a perfectionist, then you can. So remember that if you hit the plus sign, then you can add, and you can just kind of push up a bit. Make sure that your tool is tiny. If it's too big, you're going to grab that sky and you're going to lose your selection. So I'm just going to bump it up a little bit. If I go too far, remember I could go to the minus tool and bump it back. That is good enough. Okay, go back out, and I'm going to save the selection now. Save it. Now remember, I am saving the foreground. I'm saving the white of my mask layer, what I am revealing. So I'm going to call it foreground, hit return, and then of course I need to capture the sky too, so I'm going to go up and I'm going to inverse my selection. It jumps up to the sky. I'm going to save it as sky, and now I have those things, which is cool. Okay, and then you kind of know the rest of this already because we're jumping back into what we already know. So if I wanted to make an adjustment layer using my levels, then I would go up to Load Selection, and I'm going to work on the foreground first. Okay, so that grabs the foreground, and then I'm going to hit my levels, and that is going to make a new mask layer just for the foreground where I can adjust my levels, which is my histogram here where I'm trying to get it balanced. So I might need to pop up my brights a little bit, make sure that shadows are right in that range, and then mess around with the midtones here. Okay. Don't forget, this is an important step, especially when you do use this painted selection tool, that you hit your mask and you feather just a little bit, not too much, and then close that up. And then I also want to adjust my colors, so I'm going to go up here, I'm going to load the selection again, and I have a bunch in here because I did this before, so ignore that. It should really only say foreground and sky. So I need the foreground again, grab that, and I'm going to make a color balance layer. So now I have, again, my mask has been created for the foreground up here, but we're going to adjust colors. I really just pepper it in there. I don't adjust too much. I'm kind of a straight shooter, so I try to capture the best color and the best light when I'm taking the photograph so that I don't have to really Photoshop it too much. In fact, I really am always hard-pressed to change the color balance because I love that real color. And that's what I'm going for when I'm shooting. I really want to capture the real color. I don't want a Photoshopped color. So it's really personal taste, the personal aesthetic. Okay, so now I want to adjust the sky a little bit, which is tricky because the clouds are blown out a bit, just a little bit. So I don't want to make them too contrasty. I want them to also look real. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to load that selection. I'm going to load my sky. I'm going to adjust the levels of my sky. Now I'm noticing that the dark, my shadows are kind of gone. But if I make them, see if I drop them in too much, then it looks synthetic. It does not look real. So I'm going to go right to the edge of that histogram, right where I see that little bit of white there. And I'm going to drag my highlights right to the edge. And then this is where I can have a little wiggle room without, if I go too far this way, then I see it kind of weirdly cut out. And if I go too far this way, then it kind of blows it out. So just find the perfect spot. And then of course make sure to feather. This is an important edge to feather. You don't go too far, but you can play around with it. And boom. And now we go to load sky, and we're going to adjust the color of the sky as well. Load sky, color balance, makes a new layer. Mess with my colors again. I'm going for realistic colors. So I would never want like a super green sky because that's not what I saw when I was there. And it's important for me to capture what I saw. Okay, just a teeny little bit if you want to feather it. Okay, so this is what all your adjustment layers should look like when you're done. Make sure that you check your image size. This is a raw file, so it's going to be pretty big. But you can adjust, down to, let's say, 8 by 10 or whatever it comes out to when you constrain your proportions. And then, of course, 300 dpi. Okay. Open that up a little bit bigger, and then you're going to save as. You just title it Lab 9 and your last name. You're going to eventually save it into a Google Drive and share a link with me. But you're going to save it as a PSD, and you're also going to save it as a JPEG. Okay, so that is the first selection tool that I wanted to teach you. And so now I'm going to teach you the second selection tool, which is using color range to make your selections. So I'm just going to grab all these guys here, delete, and that gets rid of all my information. So pretend like this is a new image. With your new image, I want you to use the same rules. You're going to be choosing a photojournalistic image that is a raw file format, something that is not necessarily correctly exposed, and you're going to use a rule of thirds for this image as well. Okay, you guys are going to kick me when you learn how to do this because it's such a simple way of creating a selection. So again, do all your things, do your assign your color profile, done. And you're going to make your duplicate copy, done, and you're going to sharpen and sharp mask, mess around with that a little bit. Okay. All right, and so now this one is pretty cool. I use this one a lot in my own work. So you're going to select a color range. So you're going to make sure that you're on your background copy, and you're going to go up to select color range, and you're going to have this box that pops up. Now it looks like this because I was previously messing around with this image, you know, trying to adjust the sky, the clouds, and the highlights of the snow. The first thing I want you to do is think about your shadows in the darker areas. So you're going to take this little eyedropper and you're going to click. And you're going to see in this image here that it is revealing what you're clicking. But if you want to add to it, if that's not enough, then you hold the shift key down and you click again in another area. And it's basically grabbing that color range, and it's grabbing everything that's in that color range. And you could go further, go further. Don't go too far with it, and you'll see why in a second. Because now it's starting to grab the railing, and I don't necessarily want all that. I just want some of the shadows in the dirt. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. We can talk about this later, but you can adjust the fuzziness of it. You can kind of mess around with that a bit. And you can also adjust different things. Like you can grab all the blues, all the different colors, or the shadows, midtones, highlights, skin tones, whatever you want. You can sample it or you can grab specific things. You hit OK, and now you see that it grabs all of that. All right, so we want to capture that, right? We want to save it. So we're going to save this, and we're going to call it dirt. OK. And then we can deselect it. Deselect it. Load our selection. Dirt. And we're going to hit color. We're going to get the levels adjusted. Now I want you to really look at this. We're going to drag those shadows up a bit so we hit the histogram, and you're going to see, of course, there's shadows, so there's not a lot of highlight, but look what happens when we go too far. It really kind of washes out the image and sort of does this weird outlining, especially up here. We don't want that. We really want to avoid, it flattens the image out way too much. So you really only have a tiny little bit of wiggle room when you're messing around with this color range. And then also feathering your edges is really important because it kind of blends your selection. Okay, so your layer should look like this, and we've made our adjustments. So now I want to do a color balance of this adjustment. So again, I go up to load selection, dirt, and color balance. Maybe I want the dirt too. The dirt was really red, so maybe I just kind of want to enhance that a little bit, just a smidge. Okay, and then feather it up a bit, shut that down. All right, so I've made one selection. I want you to make two. So I think that the next thing that's important to me here is maybe bringing out the snow and the clouds a bit, maybe popping those highlights. So I need to make a color range selection of that again. So to do that, I need to go back to my background copy, and I need to do another color range selection. And it's already selected all the dirt, but don't worry about that. Just pick another selection and it will go to that. So I really just kind of, now that's too much. So I might back off a little bit, or if I did that and it's too much, then I just go back to the dirt, and then I grab a little bit of the sky, and then I go here, and maybe a little bit of the snow. And remember, I'm clicking on just the highlights, just trying to make that snow pop a bit in the clouds. Okay, okay, and that's selected those highlights. Don't forget to save it. And let's call it white. Let's just call it white. Okay, so even though this is all selected, we still need to load the selection. I know it sounds funny, but it's just what happens. It's just not selected yet. Okay, so white and levels. Okay, and now let's be careful here. Now I wouldn't want to bring up my shadows. Look what happens when I bring my shadows all the way up. Again, I have that weird outlining. It looks kind of like there's a bunch of metallic silver in the snow now. I don't want that. So bring that weight back down again. What I was talking about before is popping the highlights. So I'm just going to bring that up a bit, and then I might adjust this down just a little bit. And feather it. Don't forget that step. Okay, and then of course I might want to adjust my color in the snow a little bit too, just to see what I can do with it. Color. you know, shadows. I could make the shadows a little more blue, not too much. That's probably all I would do to that. And then we want to feather those a bit. Okay, so your everything should look like this. So you should have two adjustments for your whites, your sky, and your snow. So that's levels and color balance. And two adjustments for the shadows and your dirt, levels and color balance. Okay, and then we forgot to do this on the first time we changed this image, but remember to always unsharp your mask again. Okay, to do that we have to be on the background copy. Unsharp it again. You know, play with it. Okay. All right, and then we're going to save it. And we're going to change the image size. Oops. It's already the right image. Okay, size, and then we're going to save as. You can just call this lab number 9 image 2, your last name, save it as a PSD and a JPEG. Save all 4 images. So you have 2 JPEGs and 2 PSDs into one folder. It doesn't matter what you call that folder, just put it in week 1 of semester 2. And then you're going to share that link to the whole folder on Schoology. And that is your submission. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.